Welcome back to the Water Pod. I'm your host, Waterboy, with my co-host here, Cousin Sal. Hey. We got a special guest tonight, lawyer Scott Evans. How you feeling tonight, man?
Feeling great. Great. Appreciate y'all having me out.
Yeah, man. We greatly appreciate you giving us your time. You know, we're typically like a music podcast. Have a lot of rappers on, things like that. We've had some like holistic people on. We've had a few people out of the ordinary, but that's why shout out Charlie Bird. He comes and delivers, because I own a marble and granite company, so he comes and delivers like the material to us, and he watches our podcast, so we appreciate that. But he was like, you know, you need any guys? I'm in a car club with a bunch of different guys, and I was like, man, you hook me up with anybody. We want to like expand. And like when we started the podcast, our original idea behind it was my slogan is think harder, work smarter. If you want it to grow, just add water. All right, so that was the Water Pod. So we wanted to like expand in the community and have people on that could help people grow, you know, like grow in their field or in their aspirations or dreams. So I'm super excited to have somebody in an esteemed field as being a lawyer and things like that. So I'm super grateful that you came on and giving us your time. What made you want to be a lawyer?
You know, it sort of was something I fell into. Sort of didn't know what I wanted to do when I got finished with college here at the College of Charleston, and thought, well, if I get a little bit more education, I'm not quite burnt out on school yet. Maybe that'll open up a few more doors. And it was over my first summer in law school that I really sort of made my mind up that this is what I want to do, and I'm sure we'll sort of get there later. But I sort of fell into it. Never thought this is what I wanted to do. Growing up, I used to see it on TV and thought, you know, that looks miserable.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite like law or court movies?
I hate all law court movies.
Really?
I won't watch Suits. I won't watch anything having
even
to do
like
with the law.
My Cousin Vinny.
Well, I mean,
Cousin Vinny was
That's
great.
a little
Dude.
different.
I mean, that's a classic.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
classic.
Well, that's interesting.
Two youths.
I always wanted to be a lawyer. Life took me in a different direction. My son is 16, about to be 17 in January, and he's kind of teetering between architect or law, and you know, I was like, well, if you want to be a lawyer, it's gonna be a lot of school, you know. Yeah. So I hope you like school. But what were your aspirations originally?
You know, I've always sort of been into dealing with cars, and I wanted to find a career that would pay me enough money so that I could do that on the side, but never really thought about doing that as a profession, which looking back, that's probably what I should have done. Mm-hmm. But my dad had been in the military as a pilot, and then after he got out of the military, he was in federal law enforcement. I thought, well, that's sort of a good idea. Maybe I'll do that. And the problem was, back in those days when I was coming out of school, if you took a job like that, they would just pick you up and put you in random places like Gary, Indiana, or you know, Houston. Just you had no control over where you went. And that's sort of how we grew up, being shipped around different parts of the country, picked up out of school, my brother and sister. And, you know, I thought, when I stay in school a little bit longer, maybe I'll have a little bit more leverage and not get stuck in Gary, Indiana, or Idaho, or someplace like that. You know?
Nice. Well, that's good you were thinking like that. That's what I try to instill into my son now. I'm like, you're kind of the writer of your own destiny, but if you play around too much, or you get, you know, like, for instance, me, I tell him all the time, like, I had him when I was 19, so, you know, kind of seal my fate that way. Not that it's a bad thing. I love my kids, and like I feel like I'm a pretty successful guy, but I definitely had to like pivot and go, like, I got to do these things because I have a kid now. Like,
things you got to take. I heard a piece of advice that said, if you're under 18 years old, as soon as you have the chance to, leave your hometown, move out of your hometown.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Just move out, go, because you really put yourself in a box just staying at home. It's a safety net, and some people are totally cool with living a simple life, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. But if you have dreams, man, leave your hometown. There's so much the world has to offer. There's so many people you can cross paths with and just be in the world with, man. Why constrain yourself?
Absolutely. You know, as I think back on sort of how I got to my current career, it's just sort of laying back and being open as new opportunities present themselves, because I never saw myself first practicing law, then practicing law on the side that I am on, and then handling the type of cases that I handle. I always thought, you know, people that brought lawsuits were just ambulance chasers looking to get something for nothing. You see the commercials on television, and you think, if something bad happens to you, an insurance company writes you a check, and the people that file lawsuits are just looking to get something they don't deserve. And that's what I thought most of the way through law school, until I sort of figured out, well, that's not really the case.
We've had a little, well, not us, but like my wife has been in a couple car accidents, and she had to go down that route of personal injury attorney and all of that jazz, and it's
And when really bad things happen to you, it's not that simple to just go ahead and get made whole. The worse the situation is, sort of the harder it is to get down that path. If insurance companies would just do the right thing, my particular niche wouldn't exist.
Ain't that something?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
Stay crooked, insurance.
Yeah, it's real hard when I think too, when you're like a decent person, and so like you start thinking about the way you think about or used to think about lawsuits. Like for me, like I've had situations where like I've been in wrecks and the body shop took advantage of me, or this person, and like they're not wanting to just do what's right, and then a person like me is just like, well, I don't want to put a lawsuit on somebody, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like this negative connotations behind even just doing what you have to do to get, like you said, to be made whole, to get what's rightfully yours or what you deserve. Like my truck was less than 6 months old, and I'm giving the insurance company a diminished value report. They're like, I can't give you anywhere near that. And like, you're gonna have to do all this research. Like, you're gonna have to find a truck that's exact year as yours, that's been in a wreck like yours. I'm like, so like, how is that? I pay you $500 a month for full coverage. That's $6,000 a year, and you want me to do your job? Like,
the insurance company.
Yeah, the insurance company wanted me to like
attorney.
Go investigate and go like find these other. I was like, I haven't. They're like, we can't give you what you're asking for. I was like, well, ma'am, I haven't asked you for anything. Like, I'm just telling you what the dealership told me. Like, you could hit me with an offer or something,
Yeah, my wife got into her. She got in her wreck, and she was like, I'm gonna sue. I'm gonna sue. Man, I was like, don't do that. You don't want to jump through all those hoops and do all this and that. It doesn't seem you're not gonna win. You're not gonna do nothing. And she won.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang. She got me.
Yeah.
She was right. Hey, so that girl's fearless, man.
Well, like I know you said that you didn't necessarily want to go into law, and we were just talking about some of the negative connotations behind being a defense attorney for ambulance chasers or those type. Like, what was like maybe a case or something that happened that showed you that it could be a good
sort of what really happened was my first summer in law school, I couldn't find a decent job that would pay me anything. So I took a volunteer job as an intern for a federal judge that wasn't paid. So because I needed money for the school year, I would come back to Charleston 3 days a week and paint cars to pick up a little side money. And then Monday through Thursday, I'd go and volunteer with this judge in Columbia. Of course, wasn't getting paid. But that sort of really changed my whole path. At that time, there was a case that came before the judge where a train had derailed in Graniteville, South Carolina. And the train was carrying chlorine gas. And some of those tank cars ruptured in the crash and suffocated 7 people to death in their sleep. God. And, it's just a horrible way to go. There was a factory right at the site of the derailment, and that chlorine gas instantly rusted every piece of machinery in the factory. It was like you were looking at equipment that came out of the Titanic, and that happened within a matter of hours. Wow. And, I was sitting there. I thought I was fairly conservative politically at the time. I thought all these people that brought lawsuits were just out to get something for nothing. And I would watch these lawyers be flown in from Virginia, Los Angeles, Boston, to argue about not turning over documents to the families of these 7 people that were killed. Mm-hmm. And I said, this is not how this is supposed to work. If you're killed by a train derailment in your sleep, you should be made whole. They've got insurance. Why are they not doing that? And I sort of really opened my eyes to how the system actually works. And the next summer, I went and worked for the firm that was bringing the case against the railroad. And that sort of set me on my path. But had I not taken that unpaid internship, I probably would be doing something totally different.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's a great point. I've mentioned it on this podcast before because you've already just. I mean, we've got. I feel like you're dropping a wealth of like nuggets in there that's not that are probably just going to go over people's heads. But you've spoken about opportunities. You've spoken about taking unpaid internships and like all these things that like changed your life drastically. You know, and a lot of people think like, especially our generation. I mean, our generation maybe not as much, but like my son's generation, things like that, they don't understand like why am I doing X if I'm not getting Y? You know, like, and it's like, well, sometimes you do the X and you end up with the Z. Like you were thinking you should get a Y, but then you end up with a Z. You know, you end up with something much more.
Yeah, experience is almost priceless.
Right.
Man.
That's right. For example, when I went and took that job my second summer. I had the option to go work for, at that time I was 23 years old. I was single, and I had the opportunity to go spend my summer in Charleston working for a corporate firm, or go work for this firm that was going after the railroad company in Barnwell, South Carolina, where you can't even find a place to rent. So that was sort of a tough decision as a 23-year-old single man. I'm going to go spend my summer in downtown Charleston, or I'm going to spend my summer in Barnwell. But, thank God I did.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't think we ever even got, because I know before the podcast you were telling us that you had come from California. Like,
that's right.
How did you end up in was Charleston like a destination, like College of Charleston? Was it a destination that you just picked, or you had some kind of ties here?
So until I was 12, I lived in a part of Southern California called the Inland Empire. And the Inland Empire is sort of this desert hellscape where everybody that works in downtown Los Angeles but can't afford to live in Los Angeles County lives and drives 2 hours to get to work. Oof. Somebody asked me recently, well, can you describe Southern California? And I said, yeah, Southern California is sort of like 400 square miles of St. James Boulevard in Goose Creek. Mm-hmm. It's just concentric circles of suburban sprawl emanating from downtown Los Angeles. You hit the coast on one end, and then you hit the Mojave Desert on the other end, and that's sort of constantly expanding further and further into the desert. If you go to California, you see the palm trees, you see the grass. All of that is placed there and watered every day. The whole section of the state is one large sort of desert hellscape. And of course, it's been well manicured, and it's beautiful homes, beautiful neighborhoods that are built on top of tumbleweeds and cactuses and rattlesnakes. That's about all the outdoors you have. And, one benefit of that is none of the cars rust.
Ah, nice. It's weird, though, because they're on the coast, right? You figured the salt water would do that.
Well, so much of Southern California is actually inland. You've got some beautiful coastal areas, a little bit in Los Angeles, a lot in Orange County, but a lot of the people that work in Los Angeles live sort of more in those inland counties because it's so expensive on the coast and has been since the 1940s. But because of all that desert air, all of the custom car movements started in Southern California. Choppers, the Hells Angels were centered in San Bernardino, California for a long time. So choppers started. Hot rods started in Southern California. Lowriders started.
My favorite car
in Southern California. Everybody says Los Angeles is where the birth of lowriding is claimed to have happened. But if you get a little further inland into San Bernardino County, on the coast of Ventura County, San Diego County, those folks go as hard as the people in Los Angeles. But all that started right there. Hot rods, low riders, all the VW stuff, a lot of the custom truck stuff, chopper motorcycles, it all emanated there because of all that desert air.
Nice.
It's an odd thing. Like when we were teenagers, I don't know why, but we had a lowrider bike group. So we had like the crates and the three wheels and putting speakers on them. And then when we got cars, we all had lowriders with Daytons and knockoff spokes, and like I don't know how that like I mean, I know that we were watching a lot of hip hop and stuff like that, but it was just kind of odd to me that like our little spot here in Charleston, like our group of people like fell in love with that West Coast stuff,
And so, I grew up around all that until I was 12, and then my parents were not from the West Coast. My older brother and sister stayed because they love it out there. They were dating people that they ended up being married to and have been married to for decades. So when I was 12, my parents said, we're getting the hell out of the West Coast. We want to come back to the East Coast. They're both from the D.C. area.
All right.
And my dad had spent a lot of time flying in and out of Charleston. So we ended up in Somerville. He just picked a spot on the East Coast because he had a little bit of familiarity with
Wow.
it. And it was odd that, the lifestyle in Charleston is very similar to the lifestyle in Southern California because we've got similar weather. We've got a lot of transplants from all over the country because of the naval base and the Air Force base. Had we gone to a place like Florence or Columbia, it probably would have been a little harder to transition. But and then, Charleston's always had a really great custom car scene thanks to people like Charlie Bird, who you mentioned. I turned 40 this year. Charlie's been looking out for me since I was 15 years old. So 25 years this year since Charlie's sort of been looking out for me.
Yeah, like I said, I only know him from delivering material to us, but seems like a outstanding guy, upstanding. He's
And
cool.
for those of you that don't know, Charlie Bird is the founder and president of the Done to Perfection Custom Car Club, which is, I believe, the oldest custom car club still in existence in the state of South Carolina. 29 years this year, celebrating its 30th year next year.
Where are they based out of? Out of Somerville area?
North Charleston.
North Charleston? Nice.
I've seen that since I've been a kid. I mean, since I've been little, I've seen them. Their stickers on cars and different things like that. They're done to perfection. So
maybe
that's cool. Man.
Maybe I never paid attention. But yeah, like I remember very few people had like Lowriders when I was a kid around here. I knew like probably about 5. Yeah. Me? Yep.
No, that's what I was about to ask him. Like, what kind of what's your flavor? You a GM? Ford guy?
I'm a Chevy guy.
Yeah,
I remember when I was 5 years old, I was in Fontana, California. And my mom went inside, left me and my big sister in the minivan, so she could go in and buy some stamps or whatever you did back in those days. You had to go to the post office. And I remember this car pulled up, and I couldn't read yet. So I asked my big sister, "You got to read the model in that car. I got to know what that is. It's the craziest car I've ever seen." And it was a 1963 Impala. And from that moment forward, at the age of 5, that's been my dream car.
Yeah.
It's my favorite too. Yeah. 63 Impala for sure.
Yeah, I love 63s. I've got in my garage, I got to get back working on it. I got a 71 C10, which was never my dream car, but I love it. I mean, I've fallen in love with it. My dream car was always a 68 Riviera.
Yeah.
That's a good choice. I just love the grill on that car, and you don't see too many of them done up. Like, I would like to do it up,
Yeah. And that sort of brings me to, I brought a couple of photos. In Georgetown, all my buddies are outdoorsmen, so they've got these game rooms in their house with all the heads and stuff like that and fish on the wall. And I decided recently, I said, I'm not into any of that stuff, but I'm going to take my favorite room in the house, the garage, and I'm going to put up I found some old photos and stuff. So I had about 40 photos of various cars I built or worked on over the years. So I pulled a couple of those off.
Yeah.
But that brings me
I would love to see
Let's see
them,
number one.
Yeah.
My first 6'4" Impala I picked up when I was 17. And my buddy Ben and I worked out a deal with the older gentleman that was selling it that I didn't want the motor out of it. And I had volunteered my buddy Ben to come yank the motor out in the summer in Mount Pleasant. And we showed up and he said, "You've bought this car?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did they pull it out of a lake? What the hell were you thinking?" So I spent the next 5 years. This is sort of what I had got myself into. The car was complete mess.
Wow, yeah, man.
And so I brought it over to the Dorchester County Career School.
Dude, I need to bring my truck over to you then.
And we pulled it apart, and I spent 5 years cutting, sandblasting, and welding on that. And literally, this is Ben and I the day before I left for law school. We finally put it back together, and I knew that if I was just going to let it sit while I was in school, and I was leaving Charleston for the first time for law school, it was going to reverse course, and all the work I had done to get rid of that rust was going to go backwards. So this is he and I the day before I left to law school, loading it onto a wrecker, and I sold it off, and sort of had to give up cars for a period.
You sold it?
I did.
Ah, man, but that hurt so much.
So, I've gotten back into it.
So I've always heard that like rust is like the cancer of a car. It's just like you chase it around so long. So like when you can't readily find parts, do you like sheet metal bent and made these things?
We did. My buddy Ben, a couple of my other buddies that were in school with me, who are both local musicians, Jonathan Carmen, Matt Raindollar, my other buddy Kevin Taylor, we would just get out the metal brake and have to make panels. A couple panels were available, and now you can basically piece that whole car together from a catalog. But in those days, 15, 20 years ago, you had to make that stuff.
Are they mass manufactured now?
They are. Mm-hmm. They are.
I remember my grandmother gave me was it a 72 GMC Sierra. It was long bed. It was a big old rust bucket, and I told myself I was gonna fix it.
Yeah.
I didn't. I started taking it apart. I took the bed off of it. I took this thing was damn near down to the bones, and I was like, I bit off more than I could chew. It's so much rust. It sat in her backyard in North Carolina for probably 10, 12 years before she decided, yeah, come and get it.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing I ever did with mine was put it in a garage because it was on its way that way. But like he's saying, LMC truck is I could buy every piece that's on that. I guess Chevy sold the rights to their, so they can be remanufactured or something like that. So.
I've you'll see in that photo there's a C10 sitting there that I bought when I was 21, and then I sold it to one of my buddies when I was in law school. He went through a divorce and sold it back to me. So I've been messing around with that old farm truck for almost 20 years now. I guess 19 years, and we've chopped it up into so many pieces. I think the only thing that's going to remain from the original truck is the VIN tag. But they actually, we were working on the cab, and they released, you could buy a whole cab for the truck.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we ended up doing that because we said, there's a little bit of rust in it, and we can sandblast what we can see, but there's so many nooks and crannies in a cab like that, and welds that are interior you can't get to the back of, and that rust is never going to stop. So I said, you know what, I'm going to just scrap it and get a whole cab out of a catalog.
Yeah. That's like my truck. The main thing I need to do to mine is cut off them rain catchers on the C10. I don't know what they were thinking with those things. There's nothing but rust causes it,
Just a puddle up there.
Mm-hmm. And mine, it's been painted over so many times. But my granddad had it. I bought it off of him. And it's funny because I bought it off of him probably 10 years ago. And him and my uncle, which my uncle's younger than me, so that was like their father-son project. But because my granddad remarried and then he had a son, so he's I don't know, he's probably 6-7 years younger than me. But anyways, they were building this C10, and then I bought it from him, and I could never get it to run right. It always was either running lean or whatever. And so finally I was like, I'm just gonna put a new engine in it. And then I take it up to my mechanic in Charlotte, and he pulls the old engine out, and he's like, well, this is why we could never get it to run. It had 2 different heads on it. Some auto body shop down, or performance shop down in Georgia just threw a couple heads on it. It was let's sell this thing, you know what I'm saying? So that was crazy, man.
Yeah. And be careful with those rain gutters. They're ugly, but they're actually the pinch weld that holds the roof onto the rest of the body. My buddy was explaining that to me recently, that when you slice it, the whole roof skin will separate. So take it in pieces.
Imagine that. So what kind of car what's your car now? You got a few cars? Is that the thing?
Yeah,
you don't know which one's your car?
Yeah, it's a little embarrassing. I was sitting around recently. I was getting ready to send one of my cars to my young nephew out in Southern California for his 17th birthday, and I was sort of wandering around waiting on the truck, and I'm like, what kind of jackass has this many cars? What kind of example am I setting for my daughter, who's 6 years old? This is a little excessive. But, I sort of justify it in that, you need a daily driver.
Yeah.
You need a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've got a nanny from Austria that helps me out with my daughter, so I need a car for her. Mm-hmm. And then 3 classics. So
That seems reasonable.
Yeah.
You toys, reasonable. Man. Well, I lived next door to a fella. He was from California as well. His name was either Jerry or Gary, but he was kind of an older fella. And I didn't know what he was building at the time, but you see him every weekend or every spare minute he had. He was in his in front of his garage with door shut, and he was sanding down door panels and fenders and stuff. And I was like, all right, so you got to build something. Then one day he showed up at that '67 Impala. With a fastback Impala, whatever, and so I was like, "Oh man!" And it was primed, and he had the 13s on it, and already juiced.
Yeah.
So I walked up, hey, Gary, what's going on? The same kind of similar how you saw about your garage. He had all his walls covered, and it was all he was a painter. He was a car painter, and he had a bunch of things in Lowrider magazines, motorcycles, cars, all of that stuff. So I was like, man, this is impressive, So a couple weeks go by, and then one day he pulls up with that thing, and he had it freshly, he did a fresh paint job on it, but it wasn't just plain. It was the whole Lowrider magazine capable, qualified car. I was blown away. I was like, jeez, I didn't know. He's like, yeah, man, I'm from Southern. He's a Spanish dude or Mexican dude, whatever he was. Said, yeah, man, Southern California, man. Was how I made my living over there, just painting cars.
Yeah. It's wild. Like I was thinking the other day, like what happened to magazines, man? We used to, like Lowrider used to drop. East Bays for the sneakers, and
Lowrider announced recently that they, I think it was 2 years ago, they stopped printing it. It's still online, but they said they couldn't make money printing the magazine and sell it in stores anymore.
I mean, it makes sense. The internet's taking over the world, man.
It is. I think 45 years they've been in print when they.
It's a shame, but it was nice. Like I used to be like when I was a kid, like 15 years old or something. We'd be in a grocery store and be like, just look over. Hey, let me grab the newest edition, and just spend the next week just going through that, checking out the girls in the bikinis.
Yeah, you ever seen a guy on Instagram, Mr. Cali Broker?
Oh yeah,
yeah. I follow this guy, and I look at like every single one of his posts, and I'm just like, I got no business looking at it. I don't got $65,000 to just go buy this car from California, but you should follow him. He's got I think like it started out like he just brokers cars. So like if you're trying to sell a lowrider, you can send him. And then if he ends up selling it off of his, he gets a portion of it or whatever. Like he literally broke it.
He started out as Cali Boy. I was actually, and he would just do like various lowrider videos. I was actually drinking my coffee this morning watching one of his videos. He just got back from the SEMA show in Las Vegas, so I was watching his latest video. I'm a big fan of his though. During COVID, I had gotten out of cars for a long time just because, the first 6 or 7 years practicing law is a bit of a nightmare. I mean, there's just so much that you don't know, so many long hours, such little pay that you sort of lose yourself in it. And I had two friends of mine that sort of inspired me to get back in it. I've got a friend, very good trial lawyer named Aaron Joplin that used to work with me in Georgetown. And he is a classical musician. He's got kids, grandkids. He's roughly 4 or 5 years older than I am. But at one point, we were all working together, and he said, you know what, I'm going to get back to it. And he signed up for the symphony and said, you know what, I think I've lost that piece of myself. I'm going to get back to it. My partner, a gentleman by the name of Boo Moore, who's one of my best friends and been my law partner for the last 8 years. I think we've been working together for close to 13 years, but on our own for 8. Sort of around that same time frame, he said, you know what, I feel like I've given up my passion for the outdoors. So he booked a trip to Africa with his father and his sister and said, I'm going to make the time to get back to myself. So around that same time, I said, well, I'm gonna get back into building cars.
That's right. Yeah, that's right, man. It's crazy how like once you become older and like you got some adult money, you get to go back to being a kid. But but you're not buying GI Joes and Matchbox cars anymore. Like, no, I want full on 6'4" Impalas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you could even have that kind of story, like, because him and I grew up. We grew up together, and we always made music together. And then, he's an engineer, so he just graduated last year from the Citadel.
Congratulations.
And
thank you. A lot of work.
So obviously music wasn't his priority. Yep. But we started this podcast, and like so now like he's through me, like you're talking, seeing me doing the music and stuff, so like he's dusted his pen off and we've been making music again. So it's cool. Like you're saying, like sometimes it just takes like I've said this on a podcast before because somebody, like I had a buddy of mine call me and was just like, man, don't ever quit what you're doing. Like, I know, you're starting the podcast out. You've always been doing music. Don't quit what you're doing, man, because you don't understand. Like, all of us are like living vicariously through you. So I think that's what's kind of kept me going all these years because, like I said, I own a business and got 2 kids and, one of them goes to private school. So, like, I got a ton of things that I could just be like, I ain't got time for none of this other stuff.
That's right. But it's easy to lose yourself. It's
yeah.
Sort of your career and your family sort of, materializes. You sort of start to lose yourself.
It's a weird feeling though, like, because I relate to how like your buddy says and how he said it's just like it's always in the back of my head. Like, I'm sure cars was always a passion of yours, even though you weren't fully involved. You see a car go by, oh shit, look at that, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a '68. You see that? Like, nobody else is paying attention. So I was the same way with music. Like, I would hear it like somebody do something, something cool, and I'd be like, oh man, I see how they did that. And then once we started the podcast, we started seeing all these artists come on, and they're still living there. They never stop. So I'm just like, man, what have I been doing over here like this? I was like, man, now it's so All I had to do was touch it again, and I'm like, all right, I got the
Yeah, and
bug.
I think like
Bug.
what you mentioned when you become an adult, and your expectations of things are like, I don't want to say lower, but you're more realistic. So
Yeah.
you can do things and just have fun with them. You know what I mean? Like when you're 20 something and you got that car that you don't have the money to put into this month, or you just get so like overwhelmed, and you're like, it'll never happen. And then I think when you get older and you get a little more experience, you understand it. Like, like it doesn't matter if it doesn't ever happen. Like this is the journey is the part that you gotta like relish in and have a good time with.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
So when you say you're into the lowrider scene, I mean the hydraulic system, everything.
Well, I'm a body man by trade. I worked as a painter all through college in Ladson for a close friend of mine named Jerry Seaprish, known as Skate, at the shop called the Show Zone, which started in Somerville. And
I remember Show Zone. I knew somebody used to work there.
And so as a body man, I've spent countless hours aligning door gaps and trunk gaps and stuff like that. So the idea of bouncing always made me leery.
So Teslas really bother you then?
They do for that reason.
Yeah.
The guy Jerry that I was telling you, my neighbor that into the lowrider thing, whenever he got, he showed up with the hydraulics and the juice and all that, and I started questioning. I was like, man, it's dope, man. He's like, yeah, it's cool, but it looks good, but this is not an everyday driver. Like this, when you throw the hydraulic system onto your car, you totally shoot the suspension. It's
right.
It's like riding in a board going down the road. It's like, yeah, it's cool when you get to a stoplight, you get to show off a little bit, but it's a rough ride, dude. It's no fun.
That's right. And speaking about hydraulics and stuff like that, Cali Broker got me when COVID was going on. I had just recovered from an injury where I ended up having a spinal cord injury, and I couldn't drive for 6 months. I had aggravated an old injury and collapsed my vertebrae onto my spinal cord and lost feeling in one leg for about 6 months. So I couldn't drive for that period of time. And I got out of physical therapy just as COVID was ending. And I said, you know what? I need another Impala. I almost was faced with not driving. I was shopping for hand controls for my truck because they told me I might not get feeling back in my right leg.
Wow.
And it came back. So I said, I'm going to get another Impala. So I got Cali Broker got me, and I had another one shipped out from California.
That's awesome,
Nice.
man. Well, I'm glad I brought that up because I'm telling you, I follow that guy. So
I'm going. I don't even
it
get on
makes me
Instagram,
mad.
now I'm
Like
gonna
sometimes
follow him.
I just swipe it all fast. Like,
Yeah, jealousy.
Yeah.
So we've seen some of your project cars in the beginning. Do you have any finished products that are
popping
around?
The 64. I've got a 64 Super Sport Impala convertible.
Nice.
And as soon as I got that, me and a couple of my buddies tore it to shreds. And I wanted a 64 that I could actually drive around and didn't drive like an old tank. So we put modern suspension in it, air ride, rack and pinion
Resto
steering,
mod.
put LS motor in it, air conditioning.
Nice.
But got to ride on those D's, man. I had to put the 13.
Yeah.
Sort of a resto mod, but on Dayton's.
Oh, nice.
My favorite rim. When everybody was going crazy about 20s and 24s and all the big rims, I was like, man, what happened to 13s, man?
That's
Like,
right.
nobody does it anymore. But they were the slickest. To me, they were just the slickest looking wheel on the road.
I just love the way it looks when the wheels are poked out a little bit. And it's just like, that's my favorite look too. I couldn't do it to my C10. I would, but if I had something like that, big body, for sure, that's what I would do with it.
Our friend Jimmy he's got a little collection, a little car collection. Well, he bought I think he bought a 65 from Florida. He bought one from somewhere, and he didn't have it long, and it caught on fire. Something went wrong with the ignition, or something happened.
Ignition's coil or something caught on fire in his garage. Almost burned his house down.
Almost burned his house down as it was in his garage. But he went and bought another one and another one and another one. So I think he's sitting on a couple of them right now. I think his most restored one right now is his 65. I think it's gray. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, we used his white one in a
That's the one I'm thinking. That was
the
a
white
65, right?
Yeah, I think it's either 64 or 65. I can't remember, but we used it in one of our music videos recently.
Yeah, that thing's real slick.
Yeah, it's nice. I like it. He owns you probably seen the tow trucks riding around. Jim's Towing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he owns that. his dad started that business a long time ago, and then his dad passed, and he's been running it ever since. But we grew up with him, and same thing. He loves classic cars, but he also he's got a new Corvette and stuff too, so he likes those. He likes everything in between. I don't know, man. I couldn't have a new Corvette, man. I'd already have tickets and whatnot. I'd have to
come see
render your
Scott Evans.
services.
Hey, gotta explain this one.
So, as far as I know we've been talking about the cars and all that. I want to say Charlie. I seen Charlie today. I want to say he was talking about y'all had an event coming up or something.
We do. So 2 years ago, for the 27th anniversary of the Done to Perfection Car Club, that club has been one of the biggest supporters of our law firm. Some of our most serious, most important cases that we've ever handled have come to us through my connections with that car club. So sort of to get everybody back together under one roof, we held the 27th anniversary 2 years ago at my firm at our Charleston location on the east side in Charleston. And then next month we're going to do that again for the 29th birthday.
Okay.
So we're going to bring a food truck out. Everybody's going to bring their cars out, and sort of a little client appreciation lunch with the cars.
All right. So that's in December?
That is.
Okay.
First weekend in December. Everybody come on out.
Yeah.
635
Open
East Bay
invitation?
Street. Open
December
invitation.
2nd. At what time you said?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
I wish you
Okay.
still
Food
had the
truck
old
out there.
lowrider bike. That'd be dope to just kind of start pedaling that thing out.
Yeah, that was, I can't
We know
believe I
anybody
let
that still
that
got
go.
one?
Kenny had his for a while. I don't know if Ryan still does.
That would be
No,
cool.
nobody still got it. We all had them though. I had the purple one, the crate with the small wheel on the front, the big wheel on the back,
Yeah.
and the chopper.
The first day I ever seen you, like before I ever met you, I don't know if I've told you this before, but the first day I ever met him, me and my buddy Jim, our buddy Jimmy, we were talking about, would ride around in his yellow lowrider, his little S10 lowrider truck, and this guy was riding down. He must have been testing something out on his bike. He was riding down the road on the sidewalk on his little lowrider with the small, and something happened, and he whipped it out into the road, and we had to swerve, and then he fell off his bike, got looking, I was like, what's your problem? Like, what's your problem, dude? You got in the middle of the road. We just kept on going, and then I ended up meeting him later on in life, and I was like, oh, yeah, dude's pretty cool.
Well, I think we'll definitely come out there, man. I'd love
come on
I'd
out.
love to see the cars. I'd love to see you gonna have some of your cars out
I'm
there.
going to have the 64 out there.
You gonna have the 64 out there? All right. Well, I'm gonna come check that
I've
out.
been to a
man.
good car show in a
What's
long
Charlie
time.
drive? I ain't never even asked Charlie. What's
Got
what's
one
he
of
got?
these little micro Toyotas that looks even
Like
smaller
mini
than a smart
trucking.
car.
Yeah. Okay. Those are cool, man.
You sent me a picture of a truck with the buggy, with the Volkswagen buggy.
Oh yeah,
bug
yeah.
front end on it. Oh
Yeah.
man,
That might have been Cali Broker that was sharing that.
God, I think it was.
I don't know.
I'm a Volkswagen guy. My dad was a big Volkswagen guy.
Yeah.
He owned a Volkswagen shop when I was a
Yeah,
kid.
I don't think I've ever seen one done that nice though.
No.
It was
That's a huge thing in Southern California. Literally, all the neighborhoods look the same except the houses are stucco. It looks like any neighborhood you'd go into in South Carolina, except every single house is stucco. But every third house has a bug sitting next to where they keep the trash cans. It's crazy.
I grew up in them, dude. I mean, my dad, like I said, 66, 68. I mean, that little whistling bug going by. Dude, and I was a kid, and they was just so readily available that I never paid attention to them. They were just kind of like, yeah, cool, whatever. And my dad was always like, you always should have stuck your head under the hood, man. You'd have learned something.
Yeah.
But I would just, as a kid, it was just always there. It was just something I took for granted. Like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
But
man.
they were the best cars. And
Man, I was
I loved them.
I was talking to him before you got here. It's just change gears a little bit, but I was like thumbing because when I booked you a few months ago, I think it was a few months ago that I initially talked to you. But I went on your Facebook and just checked out who you were or whatever. But I seen like you were in D.C. or something and y'all were working like a civil rights case
That's
or
right,
something.
that's right.
I don't know why that post just intrigued me.
Yeah, and so this is another thing. Like I was saying, when I was sitting back thinking about, Charlie told me, he said, why don't you think about like some of the parallels between trying cases and building lowriders? And I said, well, let me think about that. And the more I thought about that, the more parallels I sort of drew. And when I was thinking about, this is sort of a vain hobby, you should give it up, I got back to thinking like, well, sort of cars have had something to do with sort of every step I've made in my life. I talked about how I couldn't have taken that internship if I didn't have the ability to come back to Charleston and paint on the weekends to make a little money for the next school year. That's what I did all through college and all through high school. But where was I going with that?
Just the parallels.
The parallels, yeah. So, but the reason I got into handling with my partner civil rights cases and medical malpractice cases, which is primarily what we handle, all comes back to cars. And that's how I ended up in Georgetown. When I got out of school, I worked for a federal judge for 2 years. One of my mentors in Barnwell, it's not something I wanted to do. And one of my mentors, great human named Terry Richardson, said, you need to go work for a judge for a couple of years. And that's where you're going to learn more than you ever learned in law school. And after that, there was a lawyer in Georgetown, which I had never really been to other than, when you're coming from Somerville to Myrtle Beach, you would stop there for gas. And I thought it was some sort of industrial wasteland with paper mills and a bunch of gas stations and a used car dealership that always had something nice parked out there. But the lawyer down in Georgetown by the name of Ed Bell specialized in bringing cases against Ford Motor Company, where people were killed in Explorer rollovers. And I fought for a job with him. I think I applied about 10 times before he finally gave me an interview, but that's what I thought I wanted to do. I got down there and realized I hated that type of work. It was obnoxious. He and I spent 6 weeks once in New Jersey in the middle of the winter in a Ford Explorer case. And we were 6 weeks deep and we were only halfway through the case. And then we got it settled at that point. But I realized that's sort of a miserable way to make your living. But the other two types of cases that he handled randomly were civil rights cases where prisoners were killed and medical malpractice cases. And I picked that up just because that was the other things that we had to work on that were assigned to us. And it sort of stuck. And that's sort of a niche that my partner and I, and that's a lot of what we handle now are civil rights cases where people are in the local detention center, don't get their medications, don't get treatment for a minor virus and get killed, or medical malpractice cases, which it's the third leading cause of death according to some studies, medical errors.
It's wild that you bring it up. The universe is weird because I got jury duty recently. Like I got to go in a few weeks. I'm not exactly happy about it, but whatever. But my father-in-law had a jury duty case one time, and he was like, "Man, it's a good one. I can't tell you the details, but when it's over, I'll tell you all about it." So every day, come on, what happened? He wouldn't tell us, but it was the medical malpractice in prison. Yeah. Somebody, didn't get their medication and they died, and family sued.
Might have been Ed Bell, who I owe a lot to, who sort of gave me my shot. A lot of the jobs that were available were going to be corporate lawyers working for the insurance company, and that's not what I wanted to do after that internship. And Ed was one of the few people that gave me a shot, and he sort of pioneered that. First case he ever had involving the death of an inmate, the insurance company laughed at him and said, nobody's ever going to give any money to somebody that's in jail. Turns out his client was a preacher who was mentally ill, was off of his medications. And the jury ended up giving him $25 million for a case that the defense lawyer and the insurance company said, nobody's ever going to give a jailbird a dime. And,
Well.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the saga continues. The Department of Justice announced on Friday that they are investigating the Charleston County Detention Center for civil rights violations because of all the deaths that have happened in the last 24 months. 7 deaths in the last 24 months. We're representing the estate of D'Angelo Brown right now, who died from complications of starvation.
What was the big name? It was a big one that happened here. It had to be 3 years ago.
Sutherland.
Was that it? He was killed in jail.
Mentally ill, was tased. It stopped his heart.
Wow. Yeah,
there's been a lot of deaths coming out of the detention centers in our state.
Yeah.
Are they typically medical malpractice, or do you handle things like if somebody's killed by violence?
Generally, it's a medical complication.
Okay.
We have done a decent job in our state keeping the security in place, with the exception, of course, there was the riot in Lee County 2 years ago where many people were killed. We represented one of the inmates in that case, and that was a real tragedy. The only video that exists are the videos that were taken on illegal cell phones and put on YouTube. The prison system claims that the sprinklers destroyed all of their surveillance tapes. So the only video that exists are the video that was taken on illegal cell phones. And I mean, it is horrifying. If you see those videos, you'll not sleep for a few days. People wandering around with axes. And it took, I think, 12 hours before security was able to get in and break up the riot.
I think one of my cousins. I think my cousin got stabbed up in jail. If I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he got stabbed up in jail, in prison. He had to do a little time. Yeah, but things happen. But yeah, he got stabbed up in jail.
Yeah,
But he
I
actually
mean,
got
it's not
let
a
out
safe
early
place to
behind
be,
COVID.
but I think like to touch back on what you were talking about with the parallels. Like one thing that I see parallel in that, like the stuff that you're doing is extremely admirable, and I think it needs to be done because it's like you're being a voice for the voiceless, essentially. But me coming up, like even though I think of myself as a good guy and all this, and we've spoke about this on the podcast a few times, but when I would be in my lowrider with my tattoos and all of that stuff, even though I'm clean as a whistle, I'm on my way to work, I got my kids at home, I don't sell drugs, I don't do none of that, but I'm getting pulled over, I'm getting pulled out of my car, I'm being searched with and things like that. So I think that like that's one way that it kind of, I feel like it goes hand in hand, because coming from the lowrider world, you probably just know all these great guys that would give you the shirt off their back and do all these things for you, and then you see that like just because of the type of cars or music or things you're into, you don't get treated the same way as these people would get treated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
And, that's one thing that we always end up having to break down for jurors is, if we've got a case involving an inmate that died, that natural prejudice always comes out. Well, why should we give money to the family of somebody that was in jail?
He was in jail, yeah.
Well, if you're in jail, you don't have the right to go get a second medical opinion. You don't have the ability to call 911 if you're not getting your medicines, or to go to a different doctor. And, our Constitution guarantees that if you're going to take somebody's freedom, you don't have to put them up in the Ritz, but you got to give them basic medical care. You got to make sure they're not dying from diabetes or the stomach flu, which happens, or because they're not getting their mental health medications and they don't eat for a matter of months. That's a constitutional right that's guaranteed. And when you explain that to the jury, like, we're not here, because this inmate's family is looking for something for nothing. We're here because our government had a constitutional obligation to make sure they got adequate care.
I didn't even know that was a constitutional right.
Mm-hmm. I would say, not to get too political, but one thing that's always baffled me, I don't know how you feel about this, and maybe you can educate me some on it, but do you think that prisons and institutions should be allowed to be privatized in a private industry the way that they are?
My initial gut reaction would be no, except, I always thought you'd run into a lot of corporate malfeasance, when you bring these cases against big companies. But oftentimes it's the state of South Carolina that you find the most corruption. And
Jeffrey, can you look up malfeasance for me? I don't know what that means.
You find some of the biggest conspiracies, and some of the most double dealing is in our state organizations, because companies know if they do that type of thing and word gets out and there's a whistleblower, they'll be taken to task. Their shareholders will come after them, things like that. So my gut reaction would be no, but seeing how poorly our state does and our local counties do, it can't get any worse.
Yeah.
I've heard rumors and whisperings about like privatized prisons being used as like modern day slavery. Like they're getting all this labor out of these inmates to do like, I don't know, whether it be road work or whatever it is. I mean, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that happens without private prisons. There's a flooring company that is attached to one of our state prisons, and the inmates get, I think, 2 cents an hour. Have you ever seen hardwood floors that are hand scraped? They're kind of dished out and they advertise them. They're actually hand scraped by inmates, making 2 cents an hour.
Wow.
So
yeah.
It's not all bad.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because that gives me a new perspective on it. Obviously, because if it's private, I guess there obviously there's going to be pros and cons to either way.
Right.
But like you said, when it is private, somebody's ass is on the line. Like
that's right. There's a bit more accountability.
That's how they make. If that's how they make their money, they got to run a tight ship. But the state, it doesn't matter if they're doing things right or wrong. They're still getting paid. They're still gonna, And I guess I always just looked at the prison system. If prison is privatized, it's like you have to fill those beds. So it's like, at what point are we like arresting people for minor and At what point are we just going out to fill these prisons?
Yeah, at what point is the big wig going, hey, I'm 300 beds shy this month. I need to come out.
Right.
Populate.
Coming back to like we were talking about with the flooring company that uses prison labor. I mean, that's not all bad because, you can come out of prison with something on your resume. A skill or work history. Oh, yeah. The self-discipline that comes from working a full shift.
And it keeps
some money.
Keeps prisoners' minds busy because we know it's actually here. McDougal, here, I know 2 people that have been in that prison that came out with auto body skills because they run an auto body thing out of there. Apparently,
I think those programs are great. I think that even outside of prison, I think our schools should bring a lot of that stuff back. You know what I mean? Like auto body and I haven't been to school in a long time, but I just think that we should definitely be teaching our kids as well as anybody skills as much as we can.
We should be teaching every kid about Lowriders.
I happen to have this in my truck. I found this in my truck. I was wearing it over the weekend when I was out
Look at
doing
that.
some walking. But at Somerville High School, we had the option to go out to the whole county had a career school. They had a brick masonry program, an auto body program, a cooking program. But my professor at that auto career program or auto body tech program that me and my buddies took for 2 years was probably the most influential teacher in my whole life. He taught us so many life lessons out there, but I'm a big advocate of going to trade school and giving our kids a skill in high school.
Right. I've said this on a pod
dwindling
before.
away, man.
Well, I've said it on a pod before too. Like it's just like I know that everybody's feelings are like you can be anything you want to be, right? But that's just not true.
It's true.
Like not all of us, not everyone can be a lawyer. You don't have the patience, you don't have the skill set. But not everybody can be an engineer. Not everybody can be a doctor. Not everybody can do a vast gamut of things. There's like, just because you're not good at this doesn't mean I just don't like the fact that we just like one size fits all. Let's teach everybody the same thing, and there's no like recourse to be like, hey. At like 8th grade, we know this kid's not, like me and you said, I know it sounds bad to say it out loud, but this kid's not going to be a lawyer, guys. Like he needs to go straight into trade school. Like teach him, all he does over there is like build stuff. Like when he goes home, he's building things. He's like, he doesn't want to be taught English and all, you know what I'm saying? Like, we should start them with a base and like give them resources. But I just wish that there was other outlets for people, because we've known people like when we went to high school and it's like, this kid's not going to be a scholar. You know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't have an interest to be a scholar. Like let him build stuff. Like he's been building dirt bikes in his backyard out of chicken wire and weed eater motors. You know what I'm saying? Like why are we trying to make him a lawyer? Like he could be the next Jesse James building choppers or something. You know
I always
what I'm
bring
saying?
it back to the Albert Einstein statement. I'm sure we've all heard it.
Right, yeah.
If you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it'll grow up thinking it's an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that reminds me of something. I went to my 15-year reunion 5 years ago for law school, and maybe it was a 10-year reunion, but I bumped into one of my good friends from law school, and he had left the practice of law to open up a hamburger and beer restaurant in Florence. And I said, well, what gave you that idea? He said, I've been practicing law 60 hours a week, and I went out to the lake one weekend, and my plumber rolled up in a center console boat that I could never afford practicing law. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna hang it up. And for example, a lot of my classmates, I stay in touch with my classmates from all different schools, and a lot of my classmates from the Dorchester County Career School are doing better financially than a lot of my classmates from law school.
Right.
My buddy that was in that photo is one of the lead painters out at Boeing. He's doing fabulously well. Mm-hmm. And some of my friends from law school that just don't hustle, don't put the effort in, are not doing so well.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that pond's just a little too big sometimes? The law world?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And, so much of it comes down to your effort in whatever you do. If you're an excellent plumber and you hustle, you're going to make money.
I hear the same thing about like real estate, because like everybody's like, I'm just going to sell houses. It's like, there's a lot of marketing involved. There's a lot of lifting on your part to put yourself out there, because there's a whole lot of real estate agents out
Absolutely.
there. You have to stand out. Same thing.
As a matter of fact, I know that you're close with Jeff Cook. We'd like to have him on too.
That's right. He was.
So if you could put that connection.
Absolutely. I've already reached out to him, and so Jeff. For those of you that don't know, you probably if you're in your car, you're passing one of his billboards right now.
Every day.
He's statewide. And, Jeff and I grew up together, and we were, I think, initiated into the Done to Perfection Car Club at the same time. I helped him paint his car in a garage that we rented one weekend on Rivers Avenue. And he came out to the 27th anniversary in a Bentley. And but he was a hustler.
Yeah.
When he was at college at USC, he sold TVs at Circuit City on commission and was I think the highest grossing salesman in the country while he was a full-time student because he hustles. And Circuit City closed down, of course. And he said, well, I'm going to try my hand at real estate. And set national records.
Yeah, I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with him because he just went. I mean, he's everyone.
Everybody knows him.
He's like the most familiar face in Charleston and the surrounding areas. I'm sure even farther. I'm sure the whole. I mean, he's probably got billboards all over the country.
That's right.
Now.
I mean, and the barrier to entry to being a realtor is not that high. You just have to pass the class and you get your license. But it's that motivation and that drive that sets him apart from everybody that takes the test every month.
Yeah,
and has that real estate license but can't make a living at it.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned this car thing, the car show coming up December what day?
Second.
Yeah,
okay.
first Saturday in December.
Space. So they're gonna have like a food truck. They're gonna have some music.
Yeah.
Anybody live musicians?
We're gonna have a DJ out there. We're gonna have a food truck. My partner and I are picking up the tab for the food truck for anybody that comes out.
Nice.
We're going, dude.
Yeah,
we're there.
Opened up and.
Yeah, I want to come out. I want to see
super
the cars.
excited. I haven't been to a good car show so long, man.
Well, is there anything that you feel like you didn't get to talk about, or you really wanted to talk about, or?
We never segued into music.
I was kind of segueing into that. I was trying to see what's up, man.
I know we're close to the hour, but I mean, we're not on a super time constraint. But what were you saying? You had some buddies that just got back into making music and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. In Charleston, both of them are drummers. And
drummers are hard to find around here.
Yeah, and they had both fallen away from it for a while, but have gotten back into it.
Awesome, man. And you mentioned you had seen some people trying to bring back the Lowrider vibes too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I'm one of those folks. I'm 40, so I'm like, all the music coming out now is garbage. And
I'm with you.
Every generation for the history of the world, I think, has said that about the prior generations' music.
That's not music.
I finally found some new artists recently that are bringing back that old school vibe, and they're not even from the West Coast. Currency out of New Orleans.
Oh yeah,
I was just listening to him today. That's
I like
wild,
Currency
dude.
a lot. Yeah.
Jay Worthy, Larry June.
I like Larry June.
These guys are all probably 15 years younger than us, but they're bringing back some of that, some of that sort of West Coast style. Even though I think Jay Worthy's from Canada and Currency is from New Orleans. But he's got Impalas and hydraulics on all his videos, and most of his rhymes are about that, which I appreciate.
That's what's up, man. I'm sure they would love to have us listening to their stuff and talking about Lowriders and stuff. I mean, they probably love that stuff.
One tradition that if I'm in one of my cars, my daily drivers, I'm playing Currency or something like that. But if I got my 6-year-old with me and we're riding in the Impala, man, you got to play that 70s soul, man. You got to play the Isaac Hayes. That's one thing in California. You ride down Foothill Boulevard and Impala pull up next to you with the hardest gangster you've ever seen in your life, and he's playing
Bootsy Collins.
That's right. He's playing something from the 50s.
Yeah. Have y'all heard you see what Soul Sonic is doing with Bruno Mars and have you listened to that album?
Yeah.
Dude, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I just listened to it like 2 months ago. I was like, damn, why did I not know about this? Bootsy Collins is all over the album.
Yeah.
I love them bringing that funk back, man.
Yeah, I love that funk.
YouTube videos with the coffee. I'm a single dad. I've got half custody of my 6-year-old who initially wasn't too happy about spending half of her time with her bachelor dad instead of her very glamorous mother. But that's one of the traditions is we watch, when I have her before school, we watch music videos on YouTube, and Silk Sonic is her favorite.
Dude, Bruno Mars, they really got something with that, man. I hope they keep going.
Because my daughter, she likes, she was listening to Michael Jackson earlier. She's like, I'm listening to Michael Jackson. But she definitely likes her Taylor Swift and her Morgan Wallen and all that stuff too. But my son, though, he's been like heavy into, because my wife and I, we heavy into like 90s R&B, Ashanti, and Brandy, Monica, all those like SWV, like you know the deal. But my son's like heavy into that stuff right now, and he's just been because he used to hate it when he was younger, and now like I go scroll on his TikTok or whatever, and he's just like, thanks to my parents for putting me down on this.
Now I know all about
their
Mariah Carey.
playlist. You know what I'm saying?
And
So that's
Aaliyah.
real cool to see. How could are you accepting clients? Is that how you work, or you just
just come to my website, evansmorelaw.com.
All right. What, say that again?
evansmorelaw.com.
evansmorelaw.com. And obviously I'll tag all of your socials in these podcasts and anytime I do the promo, so that if y'all need help, great guy, man. If you need help with injury or
Medical
malpractice,
anything like that.
or if you got cousins or somebody that's been locked up and they weren't treated properly when they were in there, then reach out.
Got an old car that needs painting.
Yeah, if you want to get
side
down
hustle.
on the car side of things and you want to come out to some of their meets, or if you got a nice car and you're looking for some like-minded individuals that just want to get together and hang out, then these guys would probably be the right guys, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I want to give a shout out to my partner Boo Moore from Georgetown, who's sort of my right-hand man. I couldn't do anything I do without him.
Awesome, man. Shout out, Boo. Anything else you want to mention before we get off of here? I think we're right at the hour, so I thought it was a great conversation, man. I mean, I didn't know which way we were gonna go.
Yeah,
It's been a good one, man.
You know, one thing that I'll mention, and you know, maybe it can hit the cutting room floor later, is I had a recent realization that caused me to get sober and just stop drinking, which I never really planned on doing because, you know, drinking is sort of my favorite pastime.
Yeah.
You know, celebrate the good times,
Absolutely.
and the bad. And I had sort of a strange experience where a friend of mine who's a doctor said, you know, I think ever since you got divorced, you seem to be drinking a lot more than you used to. I said, well, maybe you're right. I'm going to dry out for a month, you know, just to test my will. And for the last 15 years since I've been practicing law, I would always stop drinking for 4 weeks before a trial started. And without fail, by week number 3, I just get into the zone. You know, I'm thinking more creatively. I'm sharper. I'm better on my feet. And I always assumed it was the adrenaline from a jury's about to be impounded, about to be in the box. The judge is about to be looking down the bench at me. And I always thought it was the adrenaline. 1 week out, I just hit my focus. So when I did this little exercise with sobriety, I found it's not the adrenaline from a trial. It's not having alcohol in your system for 3 weeks.
Makes sense.
Once I hit that 3-week mark, I had that exact same feeling with no trial in sight. And I said, oh, well, damn it. I guess this needs to stick. So
Yeah.
that's something. It's been a big lifestyle change, being sober. And again, it wasn't necessarily intentional. It was just something I was going to try out, but it's worked.
How long we got?
4 months.
Nice.
I think this weekend, this
Congratulations.
Saturday, will be 4 months, and you know, I sort of live in that clarity now that I would only get.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get there. I mean, I'm not a crazy heavy drinker, but my dad was a very bad alcoholic, and I found myself like, all right, let's just drink Friday, Saturday. This weekend we'll cut loose, and then before you know it, Sunday comes on, football comes on. We'll do Sunday. Then some nights we have the podcast. I'm like, I'm starting counting the days. I'm like, I'm drunk like 4-5 days out the week. And I was like, all right, I probably should chill out for a little bit. So I'm 3 days in. I'm thinking, let's see how long this goes.
It's funny
and,
that he said this. It's funny that you said the 3 weeks, because I read a long time ago that it takes 21 days to form a habit, good or bad. So if you do something for 21 days straight, it becomes habitual.
Yeah.
And it's just funny that you always notice that at that 3 week mark, things started to change. And that's because it's like your body had formed this good habit. You know what I mean? And it's like if you do something for 3 weeks straight, bad, then you just won't even think about it. You know, that's like how cigarettes are. Like if you could stay off of cigarettes for 21 days straight, then you could probably stay off of cigarettes. But it's hard to make it that 21 days. You know what I mean?
Anybody thinking about trying it, I highly recommend it. And the funny thing is that the biggest people that are sort of in on the act are bartenders, you know, because there's such a problem with substance abuse in the service industry. So when I go to a bar, I say, you know, look, get me a club soda with lime, but put it in a cocktail glass because I don't want to talk to people about the fact that I'm not drinking, and I just want to enjoy myself, and people to not be asking, well, why is he not drinking, things like that. So I always try and camouflage it. And the bartenders are always in on it. They always know exactly what I'm doing, and we'll start a conversation about, well, I don't drink either, and it's hard working in this particular restaurant. And it's interesting that I thought that'd be the hardest part, but the bartenders are always in on it. It's like a secret code.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Yeah, it is good, man. I mean, it's definitely the hardest part is like whenever you hang out with people that, because like I said, I don't plan on stopping drinking just to because I don't feel like it's like I don't have a problem with it. So it's but I can see, I definitely don't like drinking all the time. You know what I'm saying? And I've had instances in my life where I've went 5 years without drinking before, without smoking, or like it peaks and valleys. But I think a big thing of it, proponent of it, is you got to have people. It's okay if you've got friends that do that, but they have to be your friends. You know what I'm saying? Like if you got friends that drink, but they got to be your real friends if you're gonna be around them, because they got to be like if you're telling me like I'm not trying to drink, I'm not gonna be like, come on, man, what are you doing, man? You're no fun anymore. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or like that's not a friend.
Yeah.
A friend is somebody like if I see you over there drinking, I'm gonna come up to you and be like, dude, you ain't supposed to be having that. You know what I'm saying? Unless that's what you want to do, but
we'll give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. We're 3 days strong.
Hey, man,
See what Friday and
it's
Saturday
worth it.
brings.
Honestly, man,
Try that
it's
3 week
good to
mark
have
out.
a clarity.
I think I'll be a little distracted this weekend. I got some things I got to do, so I'm hoping I can stay out of the mix. Because it's just idle time, man. Once I have get home on a Friday, get off early on Friday, so I get off and pass in the liquor store and pass in the gas station, all the beer.
You definitely got to find some new things to fill your time.
Well, that's why
Yeah.
we kind of talked about the music bug. So now that I got that, it's something for me to obsess over, so I can kind of focus on it. So hopefully we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, you always gotta fill it with something new and good. Fill a bad habit up with a good one.
Yeah, man.
That's always the way to go. For sure.
All right, let's
Great. Well, I appreciate you gentlemen having me on.
Dude, it's been fun, man. This was a good one.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. I like to have something different, something new, something fresh for our viewers, and hopefully, actually, that's why I was stalling, because I was trying to catch the question. Real quick, if you could talk to somebody that's thinking about becoming a lawyer, whether they're fresh out of high school or thinking about going to college, or put yourself in your shoes 20 years ago, like what's just a quick good piece of advice for somebody that's thinking about going down that path?
Keep your mind open. Be willing to go to cities that you may not want to live in, take salaries that you may want, and keep your opportunities open, and take those opportunities even though they may not be what you think you want at the time. Just sort of roll with it, and you'll end up in a good spot if you do that.
I like that. Yeah. We say that all the time, man. Like, don't pass up any opportunities. And what it sounds like to me, like everything I've looked at as far as law is like, it's a lot of, I don't want to say like a lot of internship, but it's a lot of like being willing to learn and go into places that you didn't think you were going to go, and like do things that you didn't think, like this might not be your end game, but get experience off of that thing, like you going in 6 weeks in Detroit over some Ford thing that you thought you wanted, but you learned that you don't want. You've gave us multiple examples of like chasing after something and making the most of an opportunity that leads to an even greater opportunity. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, kids. Like we always say, think harder, work smarter. If you want it to grow, just add water. Cousin Sal, Waterboy, lawyer Scott Evans, Evansmore
Law.com.
Evansmorelaw.com. Check them out if you need anything. We love y'all. Good night.
We out.
A little